This video is brought to you by
Auckland Photographer's Clothing.
In this lesson, we talk about the difference between RAW and JPEG format. And maybe you already photographed some images in the RAW format, maybe also in JPEG, maybe you also chose both. I will explain you when to choose what in this lesson as well. But first of all, I want to have a look on my computer here. This is why I have the whole setup here ready. On my computer, I have one RAW file. With Sony cameras, it's ARW. With Canon, it's CR2, CR3. With other brands, it's a different ending. But they all do the same. They all are a RAW format. And you can already see in the file size that it's much bigger to have a RAW photograph than to have a JPEG photograph. The JPEGs, for example, I have here are only 8 megabyte, 11 megabyte. It's the same resolution, the same camera that took the photo, but the RAW file is much bigger. In general, you can say with a RAW file, it's about 1 megabyte per megapixel. So in my case, I have here 62 megapixels, 66 megabyte, one photograph. So as you can imagine, when you take a lot of photos, that's a lot of storage you need when you shoot RAW. That's one thing to keep in mind. But of course, if you only have a 20 megapixel camera, it's around 24 megabyte per RAW file, so a third of what I have here, but it's a high megapixel camera. So, because the whole file has more data, is bigger, it also means there's more data and information in that file than in a JPEG file. This is the most simple thing to learn about the difference between RAW and JPEG. RAW has a lot of data and JPEG is compressed. And not only in file size, but it's literally compressed. So there's a lot of information just lost and not saved in the image compared to the RAW file where all of this information is stored. And what is now the advantage and the disadvantage? The advantage is that in that RAW file with a lot of information, you can now restore things that you might screw up when you took the photo. For example, the wrong white balance. For example, the exposure is not super correct. It's a bit overexposed, a bit underexposed. You can correct that later with a RAW file. Very easy. With a JPEG file, it's not that easy because you don't have access to that information. The file is just a lot smaller. And I have some examples here for you of the same image, one in JPEG, one in RAW, and one in JPEG with the wrong white balance. I'm here in Photoshop. This is now the image in JPEG in the correct white balance, correct exposure. It's a beautiful image, as you can see, of a Highland cow photographed in Scotland in rain when I was there filming and photographing. The same image with the wrong white balance. As you can see, it's totally blue, so it's tungsten, and usually you use tungsten in the evening with all those artificial yellow light bulb lights, and then the white balance looks normal. It looks like a normal white image because all the colors of the bulbs and stuff are yellow. Then you add blue, and blue and yellow together is then white in the white balance scheme. In general, if you haven't seen the white balance lesson, watch it. There I explain a lot, but to sum it up, you have yellow and blue and you have magenta and green, and this is kind of the color scheme and color spectrum you use for your image. And in this case now it's blue, so it's too blue obviously, and it's not what I want with this image. If it was a night shot, maybe, then it would be accurate, but I want more something like this, a normal shot. And I can actually edit this image in a RAW converter, and in Photoshop it's just the camera RAW filter. Now everything looks the same like when you open a RAW file. Also, if you use Lightroom or another program, it would look the same, also with a JPEG, but we now try to restore the white balance. So you see, it's blue, so what I can do, I add yellow. And when I add yellow now here with my slider, you see, okay, the blue goes away, it doesn't look too bad. It looks a bit greenish now, and here in the background still there's a lot of blue going on up here. And also you can see there is some edge visible because it's compressed, so it's not that good when you now change and shift the colors with the overall look of the image. When the image is green, I can add some magenta to make it look more natural. And as you can see on the Highland cow itself, it's not too bad, but here in the background, it doesn't look good. It's now magenta in the background and also some bluish, greenish cast on the mountain and in the background. So it does not look that good. I can add some contrast, I can maybe reduce highlights, but in general also for exposure, I make it a bit darker and then you see a lot of the blue in the sky. I make it a bit brighter and it's just not enough information to make it look beautiful, to restore all of that. I will just open it, click now on OK, and I have now the image here. And I will do now the same thing with my RAW file. And I will just drag the RAW file for that here onto my Photoshop. And as you see, the RAW file looks a lot different already when I just open it. It's flatty and it's also less contrast, less color and not so bright. Why is it? Because it's RAW. The RAW file is just raw photograph. It's not processed at all. And a JPEG file is always processed by your camera because you have some style set in your camera, a picture style like maybe landscape, vivid, portrait, natural, neutral, whatever you set in your camera. And this is added on the JPEG file. And this then is compressed in one final image. And it's edited actually by the camera. This is a JPEG. And the RAW file is not edited at all. It's just raw, like a raw steak. And now, just like a chef, you have to actually season it a little bit, to spice it a little bit up, to make it a bit more beautiful. But you actually can. It's not like convenient stuff you buy for your microwave or something, which is processed already. You can now, as your own chef, do it like your taste is. And I will just do it. I will make it a bit brighter. I will add some contrast. This is usually what I do with all images. Not always make it brighter, but contrast you always have to add. Then I can add some white. And then the most important thing is I can make my white balance however I want.
You want to take photos in pouring rain or bitter cold? Easy for me, because of the best jacket system for outdoor photographers. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, professional photographer for over 12 years. And this is my signature edition of the Hawkland 7-in-1 Parker Pro jacket set for photographers. When I'm outdoors, I want to focus on what's truly important. I want to feel comfortable, warm, dry, and always be ready to take the photo I have in mind, no matter how bad the weather. One set, 3 jacket layers you can wear in 7 ways, made for professional use. Check it out for your adventures. Now on sale. Discontinued and off-season items up to 60% off at www.hawkland.us.
Hawkland. Photographer's clothing.
If it's a blue image like this in RAW, I can just drag it all the way back to whatever I want. I even can choose here the white balance like I would choose it in my camera. So I can just go on auto, and now, because all the information is stored from the camera, it's auto. I can also choose daylight, which is exactly like the camera would choose daylight in that situation. I could use tungsten, and then you see the image is just as blue as the JPEG file with tungsten. And I can now just go back to daylight, and it looks beautiful. So it's not complicated, and it's possible. I add some vibrance, maybe some saturation, and now the image is actually done. I just open it. And when you now compare that image, the RAW file, to the tungsten, which I tried to adjust, which I tried to correct from tungsten to just neutral, you can say, it looks a lot different. This looks like some kind of retro visco filter on it, like a preset added because you wanted that retro look of a Polaroid, which is not properly with everything, all the colors. It can look interesting, but it's not accurate. This is how it should be. And you can change whatever you want in the RAW file. And same thing, this is the JPEG file in the correct white balance. And as you see, it looks different because the camera processed it different. And this is now how actually all the colors, natural with everything, look. And I can of course change it again, and this is the great thing about a RAW file. If I want to change a RAW file, I just drag the RAW file again on my computer. Now everything is again there. There's nothing changed, it's raw. So I can now make it even brighter, I can make it darker. You see how dark I can do it because of all that dynamic range in that camera. I can make it brighter, all the details are here in the image. And that compared to the JPEG file is just a lot of more information and possibilities you can do in editing. I can maybe make it a little bit flat if I want that flat look, that moody look, which would fit to the image. I can do everything, but I have the possibility to restore everything, and I have a very good raw material. Just like raw food you buy at a supermarket or market or organically at some farm, I have now here my perfectly exposed RAW file. And I have all the possibilities in that RAW file. Of course, a RAW file is much bigger. And now comes the question, when do I use RAW and when do I use JPEG? I use always RAW because I always edit the images. But on the other way around, you always have to edit your images because, as you have seen, I can now reset here everything, reset to default. The RAW file looks not as good when it's not processed and not edited as the JPEG file from the camera. This is the JPEG file. This is the RAW file without any editing. So when you just convert your RAW file into a JPEG without doing any editing, you lose so much of possibilities and so much of niceness actually, because your camera edited the images as a JPEG and you as a photographer said, no, I don't edit it because the camera has to make a good image and I photograph RAW and I don't edit my images. But you have to edit it. This is what I want to tell you. You have to edit it when you shoot RAW. So when you shoot RAW, always edit your images. When you don't want to edit your images, shoot JPEG. It's a much better choice then, but then you have less possibilities. And when one day, the day will come when you say, I want to start to edit my images, then it's better to actually have all the RAW files from your maybe trips, vacations, traveled journeys, whatever, your children. It's better to have than to need actually. Of course, you can do some stuff with the JPEG as well, but as a photographer with a big camera, with an expensive camera, I would actually say, just shoot RAW. And if you are unsure, shoot JPEG and RAW. Then you have, of course, a lot more data, but if you one day need that RAW file, you actually have it. And if you don't have it, then you might be a little bit sad. But for my case, I always shoot in RAW, but I always edit my images. And it's not super complicated, it's actually quite fast. And usually I don't take every image at all, and I don't edit every image I took. I choose before what images to edit. But this I teach you in my edit course where I teach everything about image editing and the workflows and how to edit very fast. So if you are interested, check it out on my website or maybe here on my YouTube channel as well. And I have a task for you now, some homework to do. You take your camera and you set your camera now on RAW and JPEG simultaneously. And then you set your camera in the wrong white balance. Let's say it's daylight, you set it to tungsten. And then you just go out and take an image. And then you set your camera to daylight, maybe when it's daylight, so the right white balance, or you just set auto and take the same image or similar image again. And then you take all of that stuff on your computer and then you compare the RAW file and the JPEG file. You do exactly what I did now. Try to restore the wrong white balance JPEG style. Try to restore the wrong white balance RAW file and also maybe make a wrong exposure. So make a little bit underexposed image, a little bit overexposed image, and just play with it in your image editing program of your choice. You will be amazed how much information you will have in that RAW file. I wish you a lot of fun and see you in the next lesson. This video from my beginner's course Simply Learn Photography from 2023 is part of my photography legacy. Over a period of 5 years, I will publish my courses from learnfromben.com for free and with ads here on YouTube. So everyone can benefit from my knowledge regardless of budget. So subscribe now to the channel and spread the word. And do you want all 9 courses from the last 10 years immediately, bundled together and without advertisement at a super affordable price? Then go now to learnfromben.com and get the XXL Bundle as an instant download or stream via the website at www.learnfromben.com. More than 22 hours of the finest learning content on photography, filming and image editing in all levels of skill. Link is in the description and in the comments below. And also check out the sales section with my signature tripods and D-filters and books. Everything is on sale up to 60% off, as long as stocks last. Thank you for your support. Videos from the courses are published every Friday at 5:30 p.m. German time. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj and I wish you all some really good photos.